Hi everyone, Professor Romero here. I am going to talk to you today about how to write a thesis statement in the easiest way possible. Sometimes students struggle with the thesis statement, and I know there's a lot of text, a lot of books cover a lot of material that seems to complicate the process. My goal in this presentation is to show you how easy it can be to write a thesis statement. So let's go ahead and get going. I like this quote, writing is easy, all you have to do is cross out the wrong words, by Mark Twain. If it were only that easy, that's kind of ironic because, I mean, it is easy to write, it is and it isn't, in the sense that if you don't know what the right words are, how can you cross out the wrong ones? So that's just something for you to think of. So let's get started with the thesis statement. So number one point that I want to make is for you to keep in mind that a thesis statement is nothing more than one sentence. It's just one sentence. I will explain to you what I mean by that. It is a specific disputable sentence that tells the reader the topic of the essay. In other words, it tells your reader what the topic is. It's disputable in the sense that the average, or at least one person of average intelligence has to be able to disagree with you regarding the statement that you're making. For example, let's say you're writing an essay about this topic. A burrito is a complete meal since it consists of protein, carbs, and vegetables. We probably can think of one person who would say it's not a complete meal, therefore it is disputable. That would make it a good thesis statement. The sentence also answers a question. In other words, the prompt of the assignment. More often than not, you will be given the prompts as a question, so you just simply have to answer that question. For example, if I gave you the prompt to write an essay on what is a burrito, then you would simply answer that question after you do your brainstorming, your outlining, or your free writing. And your statement or your answer to that question would simply state your opinion about the prompt. In other words, it states your answer, how you define a burrito in this particular case. The other role of the thesis is that it provides a roadmap for the essay by providing a brief overview of the points. And you need at least 3 points. In other words, you have to tell me 3 reasons why the burrito is a complete meal. So we talk about the fact that it contains protein, that's 1 point, because of the carbs and because of the vegetables. So that's what we mean by the roadmap, because it tells you how you justify the way you answer the question. So keep that in mind. At least 3 makes for a pretty good lengthy essay. Of course, once you write a research paper, you probably would need more than 3 points to support your thesis, but 3 is considered adequate. Then also your thesis statement answers the why or the how of the question. So we go back to what is a burrito, how is it a complete meal, or why is it a complete meal? In this case, you could say that your answer covers both the how and the why, but that's something for you to make sure that your thesis is able to do when you write one. Then we think about the fact that your thesis statement is typically written at the end of your introduction. As you become more savvier writers, you can certainly include your thesis anywhere at the beginning of your intro, in the middle, but for now, I want you to put your thesis statement at the end of your introduction. That just makes it easier for you to find and for your peers to find as well. And lastly, we started with the fact that a thesis is one sentence. Therefore, keep this in mind that your thesis cannot be more than one sentence. This is where students tend to go off base, if you will, and they write really lengthy sentences. It should just be one simple sentence. As we did it here, we answered a question in just one sentence. So keep that in mind. There are some words that you should certainly use when you write a thesis statement and words that you should avoid. Let's talk about the ones that you need to avoid. So here's a list. For the most part, unless you are told to write a narrative or some other essay that requires for you to write using personal pronouns, you certainly want to omit those. So any words such as these, I, ours, our, mine, or you, certainly you don't want to use those. Certainly get rid of the qualifiers. If we go back to our original prompt, We didn't say a burrito might be a complete meal because that weakens your argument. So all of these words weaken your thesis statement. Therefore, you want to make sure that you avoid them like the plague. On the other hand, there are words that you should use. Sometimes you might be able to use some of these. For example, when you're writing a research paper, you will probably be able to use the majority of these. But for the most part, if nothing else, you can certainly use these clear explanations such as because or since, etc. Those are words that you can use in just about every essay. So keep those words in mind, the ones to avoid and words that you use. Those make your thesis statements strong. Going back to what a thesis statement is not, I want to make sure that you understand what it's not. We talked about the fact that it's not a more than one sentence. So here is our original prompt, but in this case it's 2 sentences. It's just too long and it doesn't really serve the purpose. We can clearly answer the question in 1 sentence. Therefore, anything after that, keep it for the remainder of the essay. Certainly you can discuss some of this later, but just answer in 1 sentence. It cannot be a question. Why can it not be a question? Because you start your thesis statement by answering the question. So don't answer a question with a question. It has to be very short, succinct. Therefore, it cannot be more than 25 words. This is our original thesis statement, if you will, just written in a very lengthy format. Avoid it. It cannot be an announcement. I see this a lot in some of the essays that are graded. Make sure that you avoid statements like this. In this essay, I'm going to talk about this. The purpose of this essay is to discuss what a burrito is. The main point of the essay is to address blah, blah, blah. Not only do you really not address the question, but you're just adding words that don't say anything. So avoid announcements. Your papers are not going to be that long that you need to tell your reader what your paper is about. Your reader should be able to pick it up once he or she starts reading it. It cannot be an obvious fact. A burrito is delicious. For the most part, everybody would agree that's the case, and it cannot be a random list, such as beans, cheese, vegetables, beans, rice. We have beans twice. This burrito has a lot of beans. So just forget about the fact that you cannot have a random list. And if you have an ambiguous statement where you seem to be talking about something and you're really not saying anything, you're not answering the question, you're just using words to fill up space. Therefore, avoid that as a thesis statement. So how do you write a thesis statement? Number 1, make sure that you answer the prompt in 1 sentence. Simply answer the question. What was it that you were being asked? Answer it in 1 sentence. Here is our example. And then the second step that you need to do is turn your answer into a question. So in other words, if this were my answer, I would work back and say, well, what would this statement answer? What question would it answer? And then we come up with what is a burrito. And now what we need to do is compare our answer that we turn into a question with the original prompt or the question. And then if we did this correctly, both of them should be the same. Final checklist for your thesis statement. Go through these points. Does it answer the assignment prompt? In other words, the questions. By answering your opinion. Could somebody disagree with it? You have to make sure that that is the case. Is it 1 sentence in length? That is a must. Does it include at least 3 points to support your thesis? It should. Does it answer the how or the why? Make sure that it does one, if not both of those. And does it tell everything your paper will cover? And it should if you include your 3 points to support in your thesis statement. Does it include at least 1 of the words to use? And then finally, does it omit all of the words in the words to avoid list? Right? If you go through these points, you should be able to write a killer thesis statement that aces your assignment. That is all I have, and I will talk to you soon.